I just want to talk about when I moved over to this side of the country. Now, where I grew up wasn't in the outback. It was sort of on the edge of these far out areas, but it wasn't really outback. I know a lot of Americans use the term outback, think that a lot of people, the outback has a lot of people. It's a lot of area, it's not a lot of people at all. And when a certain person said that they were going to a certain city of 100,000 people, and they said, "Oh, I think it might be the Australian outback." No, dude, that's not the outback. It's not even close. Now, where I grew up was near a highway, and it's one of these things. There'd be someone broken down the side of the road. You'd pull up, and you go to help them, and they'd say, "So where are you from?" I said, "Oh, I just live down the road." "Oh, you couldn't do. Nobody lives out here." It was one of those sort of joints. And I remember as a kid, I come from there over here. And it was not like moving states, it was like moving countries. I mean, it was that different. I was going to have to go, I think it was at least 80 kilometres, which is about, 48 miles or something like that. One way to high school and then back again. And the travel for the day was going to be an hour and a half or more travel time to and from school every day if I went to high school there. There was a recession over in this side of the country, and my uncle said, to my father, "Don't bother coming over, there's no work, it's just nothing. Stay over there where there's, where you've already got a job, where there's more money, the economy's better over that side," because they just suffered massive government debts, a collapse in, a few banks and stuff like that over here. And things were not good at all. And anyway, against that advice, my father decided that God told him that he should come over here, and that was what we were to do, so that's what we'd done. One of the first things I thought when I got here was, where are all the Aboriginals? What happened to them all? Because there's none over here. And I still see Aboriginals on the TV today that are literally whiter than me, and I go, fuck off. There's no way you're an Aboriginal. The funniest moment I ever saw on TV was one of the really dark, proper Aboriginals tell one of these Victorian Aboriginals that, "As far as I'm concerned, you're just a white girl," and the girl was fucking horrified to think that a full-blown Aboriginal didn't consider this girl that was as white as me to be Aboriginal. I don't blame the black girl for thinking that at all. But as I was saying, 80 kilometres one way to get to high school, and when I come over here, it was 30 kilometres one way to get to high school, and my schoolmates were just absolutely shocked by it. They couldn't believe that that's how far I had to travel every day. "Oh, isn't there another one out there? Oh, gee, that's a massive distance." And yet to me, it was no big deal at all, But one of the things that really struck me as freaking hilarious was people bragging about farms. "Oh, we've got a few little farms in the family, and this one's got 5 acres, and that's got 10 acres. And this kid said that someone's got 5 acres. I said, 5 acres isn't a farm. That was the backyard we had in Western Australia was 5 acres. It's not a farm." "Oh, yes, it is too. Well, what do you got?" And I said, "Well, my dad's got 70 acres. Oh, mumble. But to me, 70 acres was only a single paddock. It wasn't that big a deal. We had paddocks twice the size of that in Western Australia. you know, and so 70 acres was a smallish paddock, and that was our property. And my father's property, yet everybody else was sort of saying, oh, 5 acres is a farm, and, you know, we've got different people in the family with farms. No. 5 acres ain't a farm. Not really. It's just a reasonable sized block, but it doesn't classify as a farm, even to me still. I don't really think so. It's what they call a lifestyle block. If you go down to the bank and ask for a loan, they refer to those as lifestyle blocks, and the real estate agents are starting to refer to those as well by that same name. It was, they were stunned that I didn't know the names of the local footballers and stuff like that, and it was like, maybe they didn't comprehend that I'd only sort of come from the other side of the country a few damn weeks ago, you know. And the other thing was I met a football, captain when I was over in Western Australia. I might as well drop his name because a lot of you Australians will know who he is. It was Mick Malthouse. And they could not believe that I'd met Mick Malthouse. It was just an impossibility to meet a captain of a team firsthand. And they've got heaps of teams over here. And I come to realise this state is obsessed with bloody Australian rules football. And yet the population's so high that none of these kids have ever met any of these captains firsthand, yet I did, you know, and they wouldn't believe it, you know. But I tell you what, coming from where I'd come from, it was just, a lot of these kids didn't really have a clue what it was like on a farm. We went on a school camp that was to go out into the bush, and I took a pocket knife, and one of the other kids dobbed on me, and I just thought, well, what the fuck? Like, we used to bring this sort of shit to school, and it was no big deal. Everybody had, you know, no, we wouldn't bring it to school, but everybody had pocket knives, and it was no big deal even to show other kids a pocket knife or a knife or something like that. In Western Australia, you do that in Victoria, and they'll fucking take it off you. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, what's the big deal? You know, and your mum sort of got me out of it in a way by saying, well, this was sort of normal back where we're from. And, oh, well, it's not allowed in the city. Oh, heaven forbid. You know, he might have fucking cut a slice of bread with a damn thing, and you know, it was only a piss-weak pocket knife. It wasn't any hunting knife. It was nothing like that, or anything like that. That's the one I usually use to strip insulation off blooming wiring, but that's more a little bit of a small hunting knife that folds into itself. But it's, yeah, it was, we had this teacher who wanted us to write a thing about, like as though we're a kid growing up in the pioneer days. I wrote it so good that he just could not fucking believe it. And he brought me in and asked, did you write this? You didn't get someone else to write it? I said, no, of course not, I wrote it. Before long, it might have only been another week later or something, he got me mum in and said, did he write this? And I said, yeah. She said, yeah, you did, of course. And he said, I have never, in all my days of more than 15 years of teaching, I've never seen a kid who has so much of a clue of what pioneer-based agricultural life is. And he said, I was absolutely fucking floored by this, to the point that I really didn't think he wrote it. I thought you got it out of a book, or you got someone else to write it for you or something. This is what happens when you live up way out, you know, when you grow up way out in the middle of nowhere on a farm. You know, you get a real sense of ploughing fields and shit like that, because all you got to do is look out the kitchen window and you can see fields being ploughed. Hell, I used to get up in the tractor with my father and off we'd go, you know, and we'd be doing everything, baling, ploughing. Fuck, I was there even harvesting time, you know, and the harvester, like, whoo, we had, you know, my dad's boss had one of the largest harvesters in the whole region, sort of thing, and it was it was so big that even though we're on 9,000 acres, we would do other people's properties as well, just to offset the cost of, all the maintenance and stuff that needed to be done on this machine anyway. And these guys who had smaller harvesters, they'd do what they could with their ones, but they knew that we could just drive in there and just put the comb down and just go like fucking hell, because this thing was so big. And, you sit up on that thing and holy smoke, you'd be way up. And some of you in the real big wheat areas of America and Canada and all that might know what I'm talking about. You climb steps right up into the top of this thing, and you just, and everything's blooming automated, and just press button and just roaring through all this stuff. And the grain, you're pouring tons of it into trucks. And, compare that to a kid in the city who his biggest thrill in life is friggin' Nintendo Game Boy, and the biggest thing they've dealt with is a 4x4, lived in a jungle of concrete and bitumen, can't tell a sheep from a ram, like a ewe from a ram, and some of them be battling to tell a goat from a fucking sheep. But you can't compare it to how I grew up. I used to remember we would be driving down a road. The roads over there were just gravel, corrugations for fucking miles. And we'd be going at a reasonable pace. And about 80 kilometres an hour, which, 48 miles an hour, something like that. These birds would come running out, emus would come running out, and you'd be going 80 k's an hour, just trying to not wipe out as you go around a corner or whatever, and all the corrugations would be vibrating the shit out of you, and you didn't really want to go a great deal faster. And these birds would come out of the bush, out of the scrub, a lot of it. There's bushes like your taller stuff. Scrub is, it's not even 2 foot tall. And there's areas there where you just look, and as far as you could see right at the horizon, it was only scrub, which is, it was so dry it wasn't, and it's so sandy that it'll soak away, that it wasn't big enough, it was too sandy and too dry to support anything big. So you'd only have these things like 1.5 foot tall. In some areas it would be thicker and go back to bush again. But you'd be driving along, and these blooming things, there might be sort of a bushish patch or whatever, and then it'd go to scrub, and then running up beside you, right beside your car, and you felt you could wind down the window and poke them with a broomstick, were emus. And these bastards would run 80 k's an hour beside your vehicle, and then run, and you'd have them like literally just beside the doors of the car, and then they'd run back into the scrub again and keep running full pace. There were times where I'd look up and see, I'll be at home or whatever, and I'd hear this flaming, this diesel four-wheel drive going flat to the board, and I'd look up, and it'd be my dad's boss trying to flatten emus. In all other states they're protected, but not Western Australia, and he'd be trying to flatten them for the purpose of getting a bit of free dog meat. And they do make a messy crop because they stomp it all down. And I remember we chased out a mother with a whole bunch of chicks. She had about 6 chicks. And some of them got caught in this fence. And they just fucking bent the shit out of this fence. Just trying to keep pushing through. And they just, the fence didn't look too good after. But you try and chase them out of the crop and that. And, my dad's boss would go one further and deliberately run over him, and then you'd see him hit the brakes, and then he'd get out and turn around and be ready to flame and, hit it again if it was going to get up and keep going. And then he'd hop out and you see him throw it on the back and then just putt off slowly, sort of thing. And you'd be over at his place the next day with Dad or whatever, and he'd be there, and the dogs would be all standing around, all wagging their tail. He'd be there with his dead emu on the ground, and he'd be trying to cut the legs out of it to feed to the dogs, And it was just, I saw large-scale rabbit catching there. They had his wife's uncle, Dad's boss's wife's uncle, used to come down with these traps that were a lot like the not lethal, like the humane trap that I've got, that I've never seem to bloody catch anything with. And where they go in and they can't get back out, but the door only goes inwards. And sometimes, they're only made a hole like 2 rabbits. Sometimes you end up with 3 or 4 in there. And you'd be battling to get the door open and get the rabbits out. They had so many rabbits that they had them in Hessian bags. And for some reason they could put all these rabbits in a Hessian bag, tie the top off or something, and they'd all sit in there silently and not fight or do anything. And then they'd open the top of the bag up and they'd pull them out one at a time. Bang! Bang! And they'd be, thumping the heads off with the axe, and they'd come out with these, there'd be like 70 rabbits, 80 rabbits, they'd just be shitloads. And they have these Hessian bags, and I just sort of think, how's there a live animal, like 12 of these rabbits, or 10 of these rabbits in a Hessian bag, and they're not trying to kick and get out? You just stick your hand in, pluck it on, bang. And yeah. But, it was a good childhood. No TV. Mike, when we used to go to a badminton club, used to play badminton as a kid, but during that time we sometimes got access to a bit of Beverly Hills 90210 back in the early 90s. And you look at the plot lines, like back then it was big, ooky, spooky drama plot lines, and if you've ever seen any reruns, you go, holy smoke, this is weak as piss compared to some of the, stuff of today. But, it was a great life. It was a close community. Everybody had each other's back, but if people didn't get along, you had to get along. You couldn't stir shit up. One guy didn't get along with his neighbour. Bushfire come through. It wiped out part of his neighbour's property. The neighbour hosed it to make sure it didn't get in his paddock with his firefighting system, and it went straight through into the neighbour's property and started to encroach up near his house and was about to burn his house. And, this guy obviously wasn't good to his neighbour, and the neighbour just stood there and just watched as this bloke's house fucking burnt down. And he could have saved it, but this guy had been an arsehole to him, so he let the fucking house burn down. And that was what happened when you didn't get on, and you had to get on with your neighbours. And I tell you, there's a certain person in New York that wouldn't last 5 fucking minutes amongst those sort of people, because you have to get along out there, just because everybody is so reliant on each other because you're so far from any help. And if you get bitten by a snake, you're fucking dead. In that region, from where I was, the town I was, down a bit further, 3 people died of snake bite in 1 year. No shit. But that was sort of a further down, a little bit, from where I was down to another town, further down the road. In that region, 3 people died in 1 year from snake bite. Get to a hospital, too fucking far away. You'll be dead before you get there. You might make it, but your chances are slim. That slim that you may not make it, and those people didn't. But you compare that to the sort of types who can't wonder why I don't have high-speed internet and high-definition videos, and just they can't understand living off grid here. How the hell can you explain living out in the middle of the fucking boonies, or out in the sticks as we call it in Australia, to them out there where, we'll just go down to the shop and buy some coffee. That's what some of our relatives who'd come over to visit would say, and would say, well, when we ran out of coffee, we ran out of coffee, full stop. It's only 58 or 62 kilometres, depending on what route you took, to get to a shop where we usually buy the coffee. We used to go down to the capital, a couple 100 kilometres away, and stock up with stuff every 2 months. We'd come home with a car boot full of bread, milk, and shit like that, and we'd freeze the whole lot of it. We were living off frozen milk, and that's what we had on a cereal, and frozen bread, and that's what we had. That's what you had to do. You know, we had to go to Banks by necessity, 62 kilometres away, which is exactly, oh no, I'm thinking the other way around. It's a fair bloody way away, let's put it like that. And that was, you know, you just had to go there to pay any bills because there were banks there and bills were paid by cheque in those days. That was the only fresh fruit you could get, you know, 62 kilometres away. And that was the nearest public pool. Yeah, unbelievable, but that was my childhood, and it did not compare at all to being over here.